Would he have access to an unmasked name?
In some circumstances, sure. He was the Director of National Intelligence, but I'm not talking about the particular.
Would Director Brennan have access to an unmasked U.S. citizen's name?
In some circumstances, yes.
Would National Security Advisor Susan Rice have access to an unmasked U.S. citizen's name?
I think yes, in general, and any other National Security Advisor would, I think, as a matter of their ordinary course of their business.
Would former White House advisor Ben Rhodes have access to an unmasked U.S. citizen's name?
I don't know the answer to that.
Would former Attorney General Loretta Lynch have access to an unmasked U.S. citizen's name?
In general, yes, as would any Attorney General.
So that would also include Acting AG Sally Yates?
Same answer.
Did you brief President Obama on, well, I'll just ask you, did you brief President Obama on any calls involving Michael Flynn?
I'm not going to get into either that particular case, that matter, or any conversations I had with the President, so I can't answer that.
I spoke with Congressman Gowdy just before your time. Congressman Gowdy, you put a lot of focus on leaks today, the anonymous sourcing that led to news reports about General Michael Flynn being caught up in U.S. surveillance of the Russian ambassador. Can you clarify if you think that is as important, less important, or more important than the question of whether the Trump campaign coordinated with the Russian government or just Russia's role in trying to influence the election?
Anderson, it's all important, which is why I asked Chairman Nunes to give me additional time at the end, and he did, and I went through all of the other non-leak related matters. I can't tell you which is more important, like I can't tell you which one of my kids I love more. It's all really important. I am a former criminal prosecutor, so it makes sense that I would be asked to pursue the potential criminality, but I went back and covered all of it with my second line of questioning.
At one point, you named several high-ranking former Obama administration officials. You also named the former president himself, raising the idea or the suggestion, perhaps, that it was one of them who were the source, or multiple people who were the source of General Flynn's communications, the leak of General Flynn's communications with the Russian ambassador being revealed. Were you just floating that idea, or do you believe it was one of them? Because a lot of Democrats pointing to the fact it could have been somebody from the Trump White House who didn't want General Flynn being the national security advisor.
It could have been anyone. So if anyone thinks I was floating an idea, I didn't ask the question very artfully. Anderson, we'd already established 20 different people at the NSA were in the unmasking train. I had established previously with Director Comey in another setting the number at the FBI. I went through the CIA. I went through Main Justice. And then I started with Clapper. Went to Brennan, Sally Yates, whom I actually have a friendship with. So anyone who thinks that I was accusing the President of the United States of committing a crime is either drinking on the job or wasn't listening to the question very well.
And just to put a button on this, you said a moment ago that you're not suggesting that President Obama committed a crime. That is what President Trump has accused him of in those early morning tweets he sent out, I think, 2 weeks ago. Does that make sense to you?
I used to accuse people of crimes for a living, and I know how serious that accusation is, and it needs to be backed up by probable cause and a grand jury indictment. The President of the United States, I don't think, can disseminate classified information because he or she is the final arbiter of what is classified. So I've got lots of policy differences with President Obama. I have never accused him of committing a crime and would never do so unless I was a prosecutor and had a formal charging document. And even then, I probably wouldn't do it publicly.
In general about leaks, there's obviously leaks have always gone on. I think Comey or the NSA director today talked about reading over the weekend about Washington complaining about leaks. Your Benghazi committee was accused of leaking your report to certain media outlets, or the Republicans on it was accused by the Democrats. Some Democrats were accused of leaking other information. Is there a role for leaks? I mean, people point to Watergate and Deep Throat. Michael Flynn might still be the national security advisor today had that information not ultimately have leaked out.
Well, Anderson, there's a difference between leaks. That's a moral issue, whether or not you never heard me compliment WikiLeaks. You've never heard me compliment Julian Assange. In fact, I can't believe Republicans who compliment either one of them or did last summer. That's a moral issue at some level. The leaking of classified information or the leaking of information that was acquired through another crime is a criminal matter. So it's not my job to judge folks in your line of work whether or not you should rely on anonymous sources. I assume you have to for some things, but relying on anonymous sources and relying on classified information for which it is a felony to disseminate are two separate lanes of inquiry in my judgment.
Congressman Gowdy, I appreciate talking to you as always. Thank you.
Yes.
Republican Congressman Trey Gowdy sits on the House Intelligence Committee. He became a household name, as you know, for his role in leading the 2-year House investigation of the Benghazi affair. I spoke with Congressman Gowdy late this afternoon. Congressman Gowdy, I know as of Monday you said you had not seen any evidence to support President Trump's wiretapping claim. I wonder, just in the last 2 days, has that changed at all?
No, sir. I've only interviewed one witness that I would consider to have firsthand knowledge, and that was last week, and Director Comey, and I've not had access to any witnesses with firsthand knowledge or any documents that would inform or instruct that presidential tweet.
You've said if the Justice Department has any evidence to suggest that the previous administration's Justice Department acted inappropriately, that they are welcome to release that information. Why do you think the DOJ or the White House hasn't done that, shown any evidence to prove the claim?
It could be for two reasons. Number one, there is no evidence, or secondarily, it could be a judicial matter. Anderson, there's something called FISC, which is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, and it could be that it's under seal, and I have no way of knowing which it is if it's either of those. But the executive branch is in possession of the affidavits and the warrants and the applications for warrants. So there are only two ways to lawfully intercept someone's oral communication, and the executive branch would have access to documents that support either of those two ways.
Right. I mean, just so I'm clear, if President Trump wanted that information, he could just pick up the phone and contact the Department of Justice and find out about what warrants were issued, couldn't he?
That's true in theory, although I don't know that we want presidents calling the Attorney General or the DAG, the Deputy Attorney General, and telling him or her what to do. But in theory, you are correct. The president is the head of the executive branch, and to the extent information is held within the executive branch, including classified information, the president has the power to both declassify it and to have it released as long as it's not held by the judicial branch, which would be a court matter.
Right. He could declassify, just decide to declassify it and make it public even.
He could, in theory. Of course, there could be people. I mean, you and I are speculating that it exists, so we'll continue with that speculation that it exists. It also could impact an ongoing investigation, so there may be a DOJ reason that they don't want to share it with Congress. They are, in fairness, they have been reluctant in the past to share information with Congress, which I get, particularly if there's an ongoing investigation. But in theory, the chief executive controls the executive branch. Therefore, if information existed, it could be released.
Do you believe anything actually exists? Do you think there is any evidence?
You know, Anderson, at this point in life, what I believe is less important to me than what the witnesses who have firsthand knowledge say, which is why I think it's really important that we talk to every witness and access every document. I am wrong more than I'm right when I guess, so I'm just going to let the witnesses speak.
Fair enough. I want to ask you about the House Intelligence Committee's investigation into Russia. There are obviously tons of unanswered questions on a lot of aspects of the investigation. Do you expect your committee to get the answers it needs in the initial hearing, which is scheduled to be held on March 20th?
We'll make significant headway if the witnesses show up. And keep in mind, Anderson, they're not under subpoena. They're being voluntarily